Alright, 30 seconds. 20. Nice.
Welcome to The View, exploring truth in Jamaican politics. Join us as we dive deep into the heart of Jamaica's political landscape, unpacking the facts, challenging the narratives, and uncovering the truth behind the headlines. With expert analysis, bold discussions, and unfiltered perspectives, we bring you the conversations that matter. No spin, no bias, just real talk on the issues shaping our nation's future. Stay informed, stay engaged. This is The View, exploring truth.
Okay, viewers and subscribers, welcome one more time to The View, the place where we explore truth in the Jamaican space. We are in a very, very interesting time right now. As you can see, we are in what a lot of people labeled as the silly season. Even though the political campaigns are not officially launched, but we are seeing a lot that is happening in the space. Joining me today to have a discussion around some of what is current and what is taking place in our beautiful island Jamaica is my friend and co-host Hilton Dennis. Hilton, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. We welcome all our viewers to The View. It's good to be here another Tuesday night, going into our discussion.
Hilton, yesterday, well, it I don't want to say if it ended yesterday, but yesterday was a very interesting day. Mr. Dennis Strong was recently appointed as head of the FID, and this has not gone down well with the opposition. They are claiming that Mr. Strong is one, not qualified. Mr. Strong is an apologist for the government, and hence his that's how he was corruptly given the position, and that's my word. So they're saying that he was given the position in order to bail out the prime minister out of the IC recommendation or referral to the FID and stuff. So as I said, the PNP they protest yesterday in front of the Minister of Finance, and each of their speakers, Hilton, had a lot to say. They did go after Mr. Trong. There was a lot of placards there, and they were like saying various things directed at Mr. Trong. There was also people who was protesting who was just there. They don't know nothing about the FID. They don't know how you qualify to run such an organization and stuff. So what I want to do, what I want us to do today, Hilton, is that we are going to be dissecting some of what was said yesterday at Euro Circle, and to see if there was merit in the arguments, if there was truth to what was posited to the people of Jamaica. So I am going to start this segment off with a comment from the leader of the opposition. He was outlining the reason why they were out there protesting, and let's listen to Mark Golding, and then we will have a discussion about what he said. Here's Mark Golding.
The Prime Minister has problems. The Integrity Commission has investigated him, and they are not satisfied with their findings. They have not been able to certify his annual declarations as being in good order. They have referred the matter for further investigation to the Financial Investigations Division, a critical law enforcement investigative agency. There is a whole lot of issues at stake. There's a question of the 28 bank accounts. There's a question of the cash deposits from anonymous sources to his bank account of millions of dollars. There is over $470 million of flows moving between his various accounts in many thousands of transactions. There's the fact that his companies which are involved in those transactions file nil returns with the tax department. And there is the fact that Positive Jamaica Foundation, a non-profit entity that goes out and solicits donations for worthy causes, which is under his control, provided resources to his personal company to make financial investments on his behalf. All of these are serious allegations. And these are matters which the person who they have just appointed to head the FID, the Financial Investigations Division, has said there's nothing untoward or wrong. You cannot have a man who's defending the person on the investigation being put in charge of the agency that is tasked with doing the investigation. There's a clear conflict of interest. There is manifest bias. And furthermore, the very requirements for the post were deliberately watered down so as to facilitate the outcome of his appointment. Jamaica must stand against this erosion of good governance, this defilement of principle. And that is why we're gathering here today to state to the Jamaican people, we do not support this. We stand against this. Time come for good governance in the country. Time come for a government that is above board. Time come for a new government that the people can have trust and confidence in, that can rescue Jamaica from the corruption and the mire of bad governance in which Jamaica is now enmeshed.
All right, so that was Mark Golding in his strides, and he said a lot in that piece, Hilton. So let's dissect what he said. First, he tried to paint the Prime Minister as being corrupt, and he would have spoken about the recommendation or referral of the Prime Minister's statutory deduction to the FID for further investigations. So let's start right there. Until we know that the FID, the IC said they refer this to the FID. Do we know if the FID, or does anybody know if the FID is at this moment investigating the Prime Minister's statutory deductions?
Well, your approach to this is different from mine. So, first of all, the politicians will talk about separation of powers to authenticate what we have as a democracy. All right, so the judiciary is separate from the legislature and so on. Mr. Golding said that the Integrity Commission had investigated the Prime Minister, yet they have referred a matter for investigation by the FID. So if it was in their remit to investigate, what conclusion did they come to that should have led to action being taken, not an announcement that they had findings, but them taking action rather than referring for investigation. So there are a lot of things that are said that are inaccurate. To come on and to get started in this conversation, I went back intentionally to who was the executive director of the Integrity Committee. It's a problem for me. Greg Christie was the executive director. Greg Christie was contractor general for 7 years, up to 2012, 2007 to 2012, somewhere back there, right? He was relieved of that position by a PNP administration. Yet when he was appointed executive director of the Integrity Commission, they made no noise. They didn't say, "Oh, we fired this man, we removed this man as contractor general." They were okay with the appointment. And the reason why he was removed was because, as far as natural justice goes, if you have somebody on the investigation, right, evidence in a court of law, right, is something that must be preserved in a particular way and presented in a particular way, right? You can't go to the press. You are not trying the matter. You are not the one to convict and to decide on a person's guilt or innocence. Okay? You are coming into possession of evidence, which will be the basis of doing that. And the style of going to the press, and already creating a bias in the minds of the public, right? Which you can forgive a political opponent for doing, but you can't forgive an agency with a name like Integrity,
Right.
right? Who should understand the integrity of evidence, going to the press and trying to prejudice the view. So you have some things that are bandied about, 28 bank accounts, parliamentarian being illicit for, you had about the illicit 8 being illicit. So you put those things in the public domain through the press, and the press should know better, but the press does not always appear to know better and does the things that should not be done, that it knows will prejudice or compromise the matter, right? So it's the painting of a picture, it's the setting of a plot, and it involves characters, right? Which, lead to more questions about an agenda than about an investigation or about any misconduct of the particular individuals the public is being led to believe commit misconduct. They know there are more lawyers in the People's National Party, right? And they know about natural justice and all those things, right? But when it is convenient to them, these things don't apply.
Right.
Right? So the opposition leader goes to Hero Circle, he reels off all of these things that the IC is supposed to have found that they have referred for investigation. There's supposed to be evidence he's purporting to outline. Okay? But he's a lawyer and he understands natural justice and he's quite comfortable because it's the eve of a general election. Right? And he is seeking to lead the party to become the next administration. So a lot of things, you have to ground the thing properly, right? How these things went into the public domain. Okay, what is the motive for making these things public? You got a return you can't certify. There is a basis for certification. You are awaiting the clarification to certify it. But the reasons why you want clarification are already in the public domain. Okay?
You see, and one of the issue that I have with the this Prime Minister's statutory deductions is that he is the only parliamentarian that I have known of thus far that all of his private information is in the public domain. And the PNP has tried to use this to target or tarnish the Prime Minister's reputation. And this has been an old trick that they have used on not only this present Prime Minister, but it was used before on other PNP, JLP leaders and stuff. And I mean, successfully too. So the question I am trying to figure out, because in all of this, Hilton, in all of this, there is nobody has found the Prime Minister guilty of any corruption. Nobody can indicate to say, okay, this person or that sector had suffered, or the Prime Minister take money from the public purse to enrich himself or whatever, and all those things. All of those are those propagandas that is being posited on the people.
You are seeking to condition the mind of the people, of the public of Jamaica, to believe those things have occurred.
Right.
Yes.
Now, in all of this, here comes Mr. Trump. And the public is led to believe that Mr. Chung was appointed by the government. What is a process for appointing person in senior position in the public sector?
Okay, so this particular appointment was made by what is known as a statutory body known as the Services Commission. Okay, so senior civil servants are vetted and selected by this body known as the Services Commission. So no appointment was made by the cabinet or by the government. It was an appointment by the Services Commission. You would have had applicants for the position, and the Services Commission would have made a selection. And it doesn't surprise me that Dennis Chung would have been selected based on previous holders of the office and the fact of his having worked in similar roles on both sides, both with administrations of both political sides, just like Greg Christie. So it doesn't surprise me that he would be selected. So what I would consider is being questioned by the PNP is the integrity of the Services Commission, but they didn't question the integrity of the selection of Greg Christie by whoever selected and appointed him executive director of the Integrity Commission. And there are some antecedent reasons for that, including how the Integrity Act came about, right? It originated with the PNP. And, it was not, and Christie had made certain recommendations, and they were not fulfilled when the legislation was passed, so he was not unhappy with the Integrity Commission Act. Yet he still took the position as executive director of the Integrity Commission. I will say that Dennis Chung made some comments prior to his appointment. And personally, I feel that if he was willing to take this appointment, an appointment like this, if he had an interest in the job, even if he had not been offered it yet, he is a public commentator, but he should have restrained himself in terms of some of the comments attributed to him. He should have restrained himself and not made those comments. So I do have a problem with the comments, some comments that he made.
It is interesting that you go down that road, because this is where you and I might disagree. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. I think that persons who are professionals, they will be called upon from time to time to give a professional opinion or on various issues. All right. So the question I am asking is that if somebody in his role as a public commentator gave an opinion on a particular issue, should that be used against that person for future employment?
It depends on what the opinion is. This I did not say as a result of the comments, he is disqualified for the position. I didn't say that.
Right.
I said that, and he in hindsight probably will agree that he should have restrained himself from going. The matter had already been controversial when he made the comment. And, it's not a matter that is resolved.
Right.
And it is a matter now, which, the resolution of could involve his input. So I'm just saying, in hindsight, the
All right.
comments,
This is a good place to segue, because Senator Peter Bunting at that same protest yesterday has some very interesting thing to say. And before I play this clip from Senator Peter Bunting, viewers and subscribers, I want to,
before you do that, I
yes.
want to quickly say a foundation was mentioned by Mark Golding, right? That funds go to, political funds, and that monies are paid out to the PM or whatever for purpose. Foundations associated with political representatives, including Golding, across the board, have been under investigation for failing to file returns on a timely basis and to account for the funds that pass through these foundations, how it relates to their disclosures at election time, of campaign donations and so on, how compliant they have been in this respect. In the same way that people declare onshore assets and have offshore assets that might not be declared, that based on the jurisdiction of these assets, they don't have to declare them, but they are connected to these assets. And, so you can have the appearance of somebody's net worth being X when it is really X times infinity, right? And only somebody who is able to follow that paper trail and to identify, because again, the legislators, there's a lot of agenda-led legislation in Jamaica. And this matter of allowing tax avoidance from which politicians themselves benefit, right, is in itself not an act of integrity, right? Just because tax avoidance is legal,
Right.
who makes it legal? The very same politician, but it hurts the country, it hurts the economy, and then you are also participating in it. I don't think any legislator should participate in offshore incorporation and repatriation of profits, and I don't think that should occur. So people are saying a lot of things, but the ignorant public does not know how it applies to them too, right? Because it's about who controls the minds the most, right? So mind control, right? Perspective is a prism, and politics imprisons the minds. Anyway, you can move on.
Yes. So I was going to preface the clip that I was going to play. I'm going to be playing with a little history, because Mr. Trong also worked for a company called Daring, Bunting and Golding. And at his time at DBG, his boss, the person who he reported directly to, was one Peter Bunting. So hear what Mr. Bunting had to say yesterday at that protest in regards to Mr. Trump.
Even the initial ads they had, which required law enforcement experience as minimum qualification, if they had even maintained that process, it would have given a better outcome. Because I know as a certain fact, senior members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force with that requisite experience, with leadership experience, managing multi-jurisdictional investigations, applied for the job and they were turned down. And then the job was reapplied, changing the criteria deliberately to fit Dennis Chung, because he, by no stretch of the imagination, could have fit any credible set of qualifications and experience for this post.
So that is one clip from Bunting. Here is another bite from Bunting.
Even the initial ads they had, which required law enforcement experience as minimum qualification, if they had even maintained that process, it would have given a better outcome. Because I know as a certain fact, senior members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force with that requisite experience, with leadership experience, managing multi-jurisdictional investigations, applied for the job and they were turned down. And then the job was reapplied, changing the criteria deliberately to fit Dennis Chung, because he, by no stretch of the imagination, could have fit any credible set of qualifications and experience for this post.
So I seem to not have the exact clip that I wanted to play, but
But
this,
let me tell you, go
yes,
ahead.
but just to give you a little representation of what he was saying that Mr. Chung, being an accountant, is not qualified for the job, and he's nothing more than an apologist for the government and stuff like that. And because of the comment that maybe that you had referred to, that he had made in regards to the Prime Minister's 28 bank accounts and stuff like that, those are things should disqualify him from.
You know what the most persuasive thing is that they could have said and they were not in a position to say because it would have been false. They should have said that this is a position that was always held by someone with a law enforcement background. Having seen the facts that there were at least 4 holders of the position who had no law enforcement background, and some of whom Dennis Chung is more highly qualified than, even in terms of experience working in the government or for the government. Having established that, it vacates the argument about law enforcement people applying and being turned down. So the Services Commission, in adjusting the criteria, and we don't know at what point they made the adjustment, would have been acting with integrity. It would have been an act of fairness, because to discriminate against persons without law enforcement background would have been a patent wrong.
Right.
So that argument, again, is just a political sideshow. All right? We established that at least 4 persons held the position who did not have law enforcement background. What makes the position a law enforcement position? The agency might relate to law enforcement investigations. Is the Integrity Commission dissimilar to the FID? I don't think it is. All right?
Right.
So we can be detained by details that are not relevant because they were stated. And then the substantial details are not addressed because of the distraction of those other details. So we have to move on, you know. They can say all kinds of things, but how much of it relates or is applicable?
So, as I said at the beginning of before I play the clip, I referred to Mr. Trong working for DBNG.
Right, and I didn't get the connection from what was said by Bunting.
Right, but the question that I have and have been asking is that if Mr. Trong was qualified to work for that company, why is he all of a sudden no?
But I wouldn't, you know, it's role specific. So whatever the role he performed at DBNG, you know, he was qualified for that role. It may have been a finance role. He was qualified for that role. So he performed that role. He was also CEO for the PSOJ. He was advisor on divestment to the government. You know, he has always appeared in places where there are issues of financial integrity that need to be resolved, to be addressed, and done a good job. So, you know, it's his understanding. I mean, it's a financial investigative division. So it is his understanding of finance, right, that should be in focus. Is understand finance, financial investigative. The investigative is secondary to the financial in the title of the agency. You get that?
Right. All right. So from Mr. Bunting, there was the former leader of the opposition, the now retired, or is he retired? Dr. Peter Phillips. And he had some comments. Let's take a listen to Dr. Phillips.
The appointment of Dennis Chung to the position of Chief Technical Director in the Financial Investigations Division cannot be allowed to stand.
That's right. That's right.
We're going to protest today, and if it takes a week, a month, a year, we will not let it stand. And let me tell you why. Is we don't have any personal feeling against Dennis Chung. He is not qualified to do the job. Plain and simple. More than that, he has compromised himself.
That's right.
We have never in the history of Jamaica had a prime minister whose financial accounts cannot be certified by the Integrity Commission.
Shame! Shame!
They have referred it to the Integrity Commission,
Yes.
to the FID.
Yes.
And before the referral took place, he himself proceeded to defend and clear the Prime Minister of Jamaica.
Shame! Shame!
He has freedom of speech, but he does not have the right
No!
to be the technical director of the Financial Investigation
That's right.
Division.
there you have it, Hilton.
Well, I've already addressed what he spoke about,
Yes, but
you know.
I just pull up something here, because one of the thing that Dr. Phillips there said, that Dennis is not qualified. So what is the roles or responsibility of the chief technical director of the FID? All right, listen to this. Implementing operational policies and systems. So it's ensure that the FID's operation are aligned with the Financial Investigation Division Act and other relevant legislation. Strengthening assets recovery initiatives. Implementing and overseeing recovery assets derived from criminal activity in accordance with the Proceed of Crime Act. Advising the minister. Reporting, so that's regular reporting to the minister. Coordinating with other agencies. Leading and managing the division. So he said, in essence, the chief technical director is a key leader in terms of managing the day-to-day running of the organization. No, I see nothing in that requires law enforcement.
You want to go over them again for me? Just go over them quickly for me.
So it says implementing operational policies and systems, strengthening asset recovery initiative, advising the minister, coordinating with other agencies, leading and managing the division.
If you understand the role again that your accountant, right, performs like a chartered accountant, I hear auditing, receivership, because the whole thing about strengthening asset recovery, that's called receivership, right? You have the auditing function, which is an investigative function, by the way. You have putting in place an accounting framework, right? Accounting is about being accountable, being able to state where everything went, everything that is to be accounted for is accounted for, right? So you have a framework for doing that, right? So the procedures of accounting and all these fit the qualifications of Dennis Young. The communication, the liaison, with the other state agencies and so on, right? Maybe even giving evidence in court and so on. There is nothing mentioned there that is outside of the scope of his capabilities and his qualifications. But we are detained by this. This is the distraction. People went to a protest yesterday, and when Television Jamaica interviewed, they didn't know why they were there. So these leaders who know, they are talking, right? And the common theme is he's not qualified, right? And then the whole chorus of base supporters, they don't know why they're there, but they're just saying, we just know he's not qualified, right? Yeah.
So
it's just a non-issue, quite frankly. But in politics, it can be a big issue.
And this other clip that I'll be playing from Dr. Phillips is one of the reasons why, or one of the motivation for me to have a show like this. Because you use a word earlier in your comment, Dennis. You call it ignorance. And politicians, and I said politicians because both sides does it, both JLP and PNP. They tend to play upon the ignorance of the Jamaican people, and some of the time they use them in that game. So hear what Dr. Phillips has to say here, and then I'm going to make a comment on it.
Understand what Andrew Wallace is doing. Our banks have long been at risk in having relations with banks overseas. They have been locked out of what you call the status of corresponding banks. This appointment of Dennis Chung is going to make it even harder because overseas banks want to know that you have a good financial security system in any country that they are going to deal with. Jamaica has been trying for a long time to develop Jamaica as an international financial center. If you appoint Dennis Chung, you can kiss that goodbye. It is dead. It is going to make growth, economic growth in Jamaica even harder.
Before I comment, Dennis, I'm going to give you the lead on this. Go ahead and tell me what you think about what you just heard there from Dr. Phillips, the former Minister of Finance of Jamaica. Yes.
So correspondent banking, you see, is established on the basis of appropriate steps being taken to minimize exposure to risk. And one risk that is to be avoided is participation in money laundering. So the integrity of the institutions that are custodian of funds is under the spotlight. Okay. And the FID might play a role in investigating instances of money laundering and in the forfeiture of assets that are related. But usually that is determined by a court. That is not something the FID determines. And so the integrity of the financial institutions is really what is under the spotlight. And that relates also to financial regulation in terms of the Bank of Jamaica, in terms of the Financial Services Commission, the kind of legislation to regulate these institutions and how those legislations are enforced, right? So the FID is not in the forefront of that. You understand what I'm saying? So it's an exaggeration on the part of Dr. Phillips, just to make the thing seem worse than it really is. He goes to that length to exaggerate. And he's supposed to know because he was a Minister of Finance and he also did a good job in that role, by the way. So if he says so, and that's how you play on the ignorance of the people, because you have never put the people in a position to understand these things. You have always made them think, that what the politicians do and what the politicians think is right and is sufficient. They don't have to understand it. We've always presented financial details, fiscal details about the economy in a complex way that the ordinary person can't understand, right? And they sound bright, and the ministers and so on, they sound bright and whatever you. But if they had made it a priority to have financial education and have people in the society understand these things, then it would be better. They never made that a priority.
So I before I play the clip, I made a comment about politicians playing on the ignorance of the electorate. And here is a prime example of that. Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, started that statement by saying what Andrew Holness is doing. No, viewers and subscribers, that is not true. Andrew Holness is not doing well. Let me say it another way. On principle, Andrew Holness is not doing anything here because this is not a position that the Prime Minister recommend somebody to fill. As my co-host outlined earlier, there is a body that is called a Services Commission that is responsible for these appointments. So when Dr. Phillips and other members, educated members of the party, try to tie the Prime Minister to disappointment and to say that what he's doing, as if the Prime Minister is putting Mr. Trump there, that in itself is wrong. They're being disingenuous, and people believe these lies because they don't know, and they respect the leaders, and out of that respect for the leaders, they tend now to carry that argument and stuff. And I think that the politicians, you hold this to your supporters. At least be honest with them, educate them, don't lie to them.
Well, ignorance is going to be the biggest challenge going into the next general election, right? From 1962 until now, we reach a point where we make intelligent, informed Jamaicans with a vote, just fed up with the electoral system and stay away from it, not realizing that they are doing more damage by staying away from the polls. And then we have a minority vote of base supporters, and everything is done to preserve that, because that has been the state of voting in national elections now for decades. Right? So we preserve this minority. The governments are not being elected with a mandate. They're elected with a majority of the voter turnout. They are not elected with a mandate. And when the opposition was bragging, nonsensically about having more popular votes, it's more votes of your own party members, right? And you were able to turn out more of your party members than more of the general electorate. And that is what the ignorance. You can't get people to behave like that if they're educated, if they're informed, and then you do things to intimidate and frustrate, which is why, again, the crime management successes that we have been having, the violence that has been contained, right, is a good thing, because it might make people more confident to go out, who never felt safe, who never felt, it was worth it to take the risk to go out and to vote. So that's a good thing. We may have turned the corner on that in a way that we needed to, right? But if we cannot get a good turnout at the poll, just know that it is the kind of ignorance that surrounded the leadership of the PNP yesterday in protest that is going to go to the polls, and that is going to deliver a result to the country that is not in its best interest.
That's an interesting point, and I'm going to come back to what you just said, because that's a very, very important point you just made there, Hilton. But before I go there, this other clip that I'm going to be playing is from somebody who I would have had a lot of respect for in the PNP. I see him as a future leader of the party. And when I heard this from him yesterday, I was surprised.
But just preface and bear in mind that you can't advance if you are not, if you don't show evidence of the indoctrination and the willingness to put aside what you know and what you represent and can deliver, right? To conform to a style and a standard, right? That makes you acceptable to advance in the party. Proceed with your clip.
Yes, here, and listen to this.
So this morning I got a call from a constituent who is at KPH and she can't be admitted. Because no bed no dead. She can't go to the bathroom because no water no dead. So when people thief the public resources, it means the services that you must get, you can't get. So when you reach Portmore and Spanish Town at 5 o'clock in the morning and you wait 2 hours for JUTC, you wait because the money to buy more buses not there because of corruption. When you drive on bad road and it mash up your front end, the money will for fix the road not there because of corruption. When your kids go to school and them can't get a meal per day, it means it's corruption taking that from you.
That is the opposition spokesman and finance, Mr. Julian Robinson. I have another clip from Mr. Robinson that I want to play first before I comment. Let's listen to the second clip.
When the Prime Minister, who has been referred to the FID for illicit enrichment, which means him have assets and income him can't account for, put somebody who is him friend, who got through a corrupt process to cover up his own corruption, Jamaicans have to take a stance. Because if we allow this to go, then who next will they come for? So we are here in a peaceful, disciplined way to say time come for change. We are here to say time come for a government led by a man with clean hands and a pure heart. Time come for a government that going to put people first and that going to ensure the resources of this country will be used for the benefit of the people of this country.
All right. So I have a number of problems with these comments. And while I was preparing for the show, one of the first thing I did was to make a call to a few persons that I know that works at the Kingston Public Hospital, because this was the hospital that was referenced. And the question that I asked was that, was there any water lock off in the area? Was there a problem where water is concerned at the hospital yesterday? And I get a resounding no. Mr. Robinson said in that clip just now that his constituency could not be admitted because there was no bed and there was no water. Now, again, this is exaggerating a point and what I would say misleading the supporters that was there because of ignorance and because these people are what I'd call sold out in their own loyalty to this, to a political movement. And I am saying, and Dennis, maybe you can help me with this. Is power so critical that we have to go to the bottom of the barrel or the bottom of the pit to say and do things at all costs to be able to gain power?
Is that a rhetorical question?
It is.
Okay. So, I mean, the answer is already there. Politics is like that. It's not limited to Jamaica. It's not unique to Jamaica. So it's not a criticism of politics in Jamaica. But it is what it is. To gain and retain power requires unusual conduct. Okay? And when it is on one side, it is pointed out and criticized as if it doesn't exist on the other side. That is making the criticism. But, we have our saying, pot and kettle, you understand? Or, no better barrel, no better herring. It's par for the course. So find something else to contend about. something else of substance. The people told the pollster, for example, that corruption, as defined by the politician, would no longer factor in their selection of the party to run the country, because they realize that it is part of a culture. What the politicians call culture is practiced universally across the board, right? Whether it is personal enrichment, whether it is nepotism, cronyism, they realize that to benefit, and there are sayings that have been put in the public domain, right, that can be referenced every time it comes up. Politics is who gets what, when, where, and how. Comes out of a former general secretary of the PNP, right? The same Peter Phillips, who did well as a minister of finance, says the man who plays by the rules gets shafted, right? Politics is who gets what, when, where, and how, and all those sort of things. They say it themselves. And then, they talk about it as if it doesn't apply to us, it applies to them, right? And the reason why they persist in making these charges and counter charges, because the people, they say what we know, according to Bob Marley, the great gun.
Mm-hmm.
What we know is what they tell us.
Right.
And we are so ignorant that not even they can reach us. Through political strategy, they keep us hungry. And when we are going to get a little food, our brother has to be our enemy. We are ambushed in the night. Okay? So in the dark recesses of our minds, they take possession of us to do the deeds that suit their ends. And only the people have to, as Marley also says, wake up and live, yeah. Wake up and live. Get it together, Bob Marley, right? The people who should be listened to are not the ones listened to, right? They try to suppress Marcus Garvey, they suppress Bob Marley, they glorify them, right? As great, but they suppress their philosophies. Because if the people listen to Marley and Garvey, right, this type of politics and the culture of it has no place, nowhere going, no success.
So,
all right,
as we are getting to the end of the show, we have about 3 minutes here, and there's something that keep reverberating in my head, because I was just recently introduced to something called the Pickersgill Committee.
There
Have
you
you
go.
ever heard about that one?
Know of it, heard about it being resurfacing. I have seen all the documentation, because I'm a trained historian, and evidence. History is based on evidence. Okay, history is not about just the past and dates and chronology, and it's evidence, the same evidence that has to be presented in a court of law as a basis of acquittal or kind of. That's what a historian produces and works from. Okay, so again, the Pickersgill report would show the extent to which the PNP has gone, that the JLP has never gone to. The press has to admit that, to politicize the civil service, so that the hands of the JLP are more tied in government than the hands of the PNP, because the civil service leadership is working naturally for a party that it supports when the PNP is in power. And this is a legacy of that Pickersgill Commission, right? And when you have that on your record, you come and you talk as if, it's otherwise. And when it is pointed out, again, I mean, it has to be plain dishonesty. I've never seen a party so obstinate. They say it's whataboutism. Why is it relevant to say we did it? Why is it relevant to show that we did it? Why is it relevant to the conversation now of it being done? It's whataboutism. That's obstinacy and contempt for the country, for the people of the country. That it should not be raised, that we have done the same things or worse. Obstinacy and contempt.
Yes, and in one of the clip that I played with Peter Bunting, he said that he knew persons who applied for the position, and you see, this is what I'm thinking, Dennis, is that
But
is
nothing
it as
stopped people from telling him that they applied for the position, even when they would not have qualified themselves, even when, they just applied as for the sake of applying. Nothing wrong with them disclosing that.
right? But what I'm saying is there an issue here that maybe because the PNP is not getting their way to have their type of people positioning in these institution in particular areas where maybe they can get particular information or stuff and all of that, that they are troubled knowing their history with that Pickersgill committee report that that was formed.
As a thinking scholar, I said recently too that even the rule of law is political, because politicians make the law, the legislators are politicians, and the court is bound by bad laws, except to the extent that in case law, right, at the higher level of the court, they are able to establish precedents, they're able to establish corrections of those bad laws that will be superior, right? Superior as authorities. So you can't run a government and see obvious obstacles, see people are going to obstruct you and put them in position on the basis of what qualifications they have on paper. Because even that is an obstruction, to create a set of criteria that is based on academic qualifications or that is based on experience in a particular area, right? When you know you're trying to set a minefield for your opponent, and your opponent must not prevent you from setting up a minefield. Your opponent must not prevent you and take such steps and such action, but you would take those steps and action because you know what you do when you are in power.
Right.
And so when you think your playbook has been breached, then you have a problem because you are supposed to succeed by that playbook.
Exactly.
It's just we are having this conversation because we are trying to unravel and for those who are kept in the dark.
I'll throw you under the bus with this final question, Hilton.
I hop bus, I don't slip on the bus. I watch bus wheel as it turn and know when to hop and bail off.
Should Dennis Strong stay on, or should he buckle under the pressure and
Dennis Strong, unless he says otherwise, he's on. It's not a matter of should he stay on. He's on. He reported for work. He made to the staff. He's doing his job. Okay? Whatever missteps he made coming into the job, he has to understand that, he's under greater scrutiny, right? So what it is, he's under scrutiny, and he knows the scrutiny that he's under. Okay? He either lives up to the expectation of him following through with the comments he made or whatever that it is felt were inappropriate, or he performs according to what the roles and functions of the FID are without fear or favor, and redeems and vindicates himself as being suitable for the role. And I think that public opinion still weighs on the side of his selection being appropriate. Okay, there will always be detractors, there will always be opposition. It's a political climate, a political context, and a general election is about to be called. So if he can withstand the pressure, and he knows too, right? Even with his contract and whatever, however long it is extended, he knows that his tenure, right, could be affected by a change, right? But that he has worked for both administrations. They could tolerate Greg Christie. They might have a change of mind and tolerate him. Just lay out the exposure. But again, we just hope that ignorance will not be the dominant presence at the polls. Pray for ignorance to be the minority at the polls.
I will end the show tonight by commenting on something that you said earlier about the people or the persons that were at the protests yesterday. Even though many of them may be uninformed, but those are the people
uninformed about what they should be informed of. What is all right?
Yes, right. Uninformed maybe about the FID or Dennis Strong or whatever. But on election day, those are the persons who will go to the poll.
But that's what I just said. Pray that ignorance is in the minority at the polls. Because if they go out there with the same mindset of not knowing why they're out there, we only know that we're out there to dip our finger in the ink and mark it against the head or the bell or whatever, right?
Right.
If that's how they go out there, but I tell you.
Yes, but I made that comment, Hilton, because the person who is the persons who are the opposite, who are informed, those are the ones for most of the times will tell you that I am not going to vote because of X, Y.
Yes, that's what we know. That's what I said earlier. So, they don't know the damage they do when they stay away from the poll. And they've been doing that damage for the last 3 decades.
Right. Hilton.
But then they are the most vocal after they allow that minority vote.
Yes. Is there any final words that you want to say to our viewers tonight before we call this a wrap?
Think for yourselves, think independently. Be informed, listen and learn. And you're not going to learn in the narrow confines of the political space. All right? So that's all I would say at this time. We have a duty to have more people turning out for the polls and voting. All right? We need to get the voter turnout up, just as how we get the figures for murders that have been resolved. For the murder figures, Montego Bay is 70% decline. So we need to have a 70% increase in voter turnout.
Yes.
Right?
Montego Bay, two months that only have one murder, February and
right, which had overtaken the corporate area as the breeding ground for criminal gangs.
Exactly.
Yes.
Especially to our friends here in the diaspora and the ones that we meet and they tell us how nice Jamaica is and stuff and whatever. I think this is good news, because if we get crime down, Hilton, Jamaica will be booming.
Of course.
It will be booming. And
of all the figures I've heard, it's a Montego Bay figure that has really, brought me most satisfaction, most joy.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. My friend, thanks again for coming on and hosting with me tonight. This is another edition of The View. We look forward to talking to you again, our viewers and subscribers. And the goal of the program here is to educate and to inform you, our viewers and subscribers. That's what we want to do. Don't look at it as pure politics or whatever, but is us holding the person who speaks accountable and make sure that what they say is truthful, so you can be informed when you decide to go and mark that X. You're not being samfied or anything. You are being educated, and you're going to that polling booth with a clear head in terms of what you want, what type of Jamaica you want, what type of leader you want. We don't want you to go with your mind clouded because of misinformation. Thanks again for joining us. Until next week, see you all. Cheers.